Okay, welcome everyone to this evening's edition of Stories for Healing. Those of you who are accumulating now as we do this every day, twice a day, um, know that this is a project we started in order to try and provide some healing and some energy for healing in these very um, anxious and divisive times. Certainly, those of us in the United States associate a lot of that with the election that's still, we're in election season. But we know this is a problem around the world as well. It's turning into a more and more divided world. And rather than try and tell people this is what you should do or shouldn't do, or this is why you're a good person or a bad person, um, as storytellers, we know that the best way to address these kinds of issues is with a good story. So what we're doing is meeting twice a day at 2:30 and 8 on the East Coast time to tell a story of healing. And every day we get at least one storyteller to join us, usually just one, and it's always a new storyteller. So today we're really happy to have Fred Mindlin join us from the West Coast, or as we in New York call it, the left coast. And we're going to invite him to tell us a story. So Fred, please tell us a story.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it's such a wonderful way to deal with some of that anxiety that everyone feels these days, whatever the source. The story that I'm telling is an original story that I made up in response to the COVID pandemic, in a way, but really it is a story for everyone and all time. I try to tell stories primarily with string figures. So I will start by acknowledging the Ohlone people of Central California, on whose land I am. And whenever I'm telling string stories, I also want to acknowledge all the indigenous peoples throughout the world from whom we bring these string stories, these string figures that really are a wonderful way to remember that we are all one human family. That idea of compassion, another word for it is humane, just recognizing the humanity of us all. And in keeping with the spirit of the Ohlone people, I'm going to start just, some people may not even know or recognize what I mean when I say string games. So with a loop of string about 1 meter long, about 3 feet tied into a loop somehow. And I have 3 different examples of strings I'll be using in this story. And I'm going to start with one of the simplest stories that string figures that I always start teaching with, which I call the Karuk Indian fish spear, from the Karuk Native American tribe in Northern California, where I used to live. But it's also something that one of my students told me, oh, look, you turn it upside down and it's a volcano. And I'm going to use it in this story as a tree. So it has the green on top, and the trunk should be brown, but it's one color string. So I'm going to put this tree up here in the background. It figures a little later in the story. So there's our tree at the background, and you'll see what the tree comes to symbolize. And in this story, we're going back to my own childhood when I first did string figures myself in Los Angeles. And I've set the story there. It's a story of one of the children who was affected by what was called then the children's plague, the polio epidemic, really a global pandemic that affected primarily children, and it primarily affected the extremities, especially the legs. And this story centers on a girl named Esmeralda. Everyone called her Esme. She had such a wonderful energy. She was so enthusiastic, and she loved string games especially. One of her favorites was the figure that we in the English-speaking world called Jacob's Ladder. And it's also a figure that will be part of this story. The traditional name in the anthropological literature is Osage Four Diamonds. You could see the four diamonds across, but it's called Jacob's Ladder because if you hold it like this, it looks sort of like a ladder. And there are many, many other indigenous tribes all over the world who know that same figure. It's one of the classics of, is it independent invention or did people teach each other? And nobody knows for sure about the spread of those. Another figure that will appear in this story comes from the Motua people of Papua New Guinea. And I'll show you a little bit about where that string figure comes from a little later in the story. But right now, I just want to tell the story of Esme, who had polio in her legs. And so she was unable to walk, but she had very strong arms because she used her crutches. And she especially loved to climb trees. That's why that tree is back there in the background. And because when she was climbing trees, she had her strong arms that she used to climb up the tree. And she and her friends would also go and do string games at the base of the tree. They would gather there and share different string games. She loved doing string games as well because she also had very agile and strong fingers. And one day, she was sitting with her friends at the base of the tree. She hadn't climbed the tree yet that day. And one of her friends said to her, I just had the most wonderful idea. You know that figure that I know you love that we call Jacob's Ladder? Well, if we could get a big long rope and make it into an actual ladder of rope, and then we could take that rope ladder and set it up on the base of the tree, and then you could climb up the rope ladder first. It would be a lot easier than clambering up with your arms the way you usually do. And then it would be fun as well, just to have a rope ladder like that that would help you to climb the tree. And Esme loved that idea. And so they did that. They made a rope ladder and she was able to climb the tree. Well, not long after that, a strange child came and joined their neighborhood. He had come from very far away, from this huge island in the Pacific Ocean called Papua New Guinea. And he was from the Motua tribe in Papua New Guinea. And one of their string figures that they love is called the flying bird. And so he showed them this figure. It's kind of a tricky figure to do. I sometimes make mistakes when I work on it, but let's see how I do today. So the way this figure works, there's a familiar figure that I call the scissors that this comes from, but then you do another tricky bit where you have to pull back like this and then grab here in between. And now right there are the wings of the bird. And it's a flying bird because if you pull down on this, the bird flies away. So Gabo was the name of the child who had just joined the group of string storytellers. And after showing them some of the figures that he knew figures that they had never even seen or heard of. And he had taught them that figure. And then one day he said to everyone, you know, Esme, I just had a wonderful idea. I was thinking, I have lots of friends who've had this polio that I know has made it so hard for you to use your legs. And I know that sometimes as the disease progresses, you may even lose some of the strength in your arms. And I know how much you love being at the top of that tree so you can see out over the whole city. So here was my idea. Just like your friends made the rope ladder out of the Jacob's ladder, the Osage 4 diamonds, so that you could climb up the rope ladder. Well, if you ever get to the point where you need some help climbing all the way up, we could make a big rope version of that flying bird. And so that's what he suggested. And they got a big rope and they made that flying bird. And then Gabo said to Esme, you see, if you can stick your legs through what used to be the bird's wings when we would make it as the flying bird, if you stick your legs through there, and then we can hang this from the top of the tree, and even when you can't climb up anymore, we can just pull on the bottom and pull you all the way up to the top of your favorite tree. So that's the story of Esme and Gabo telling each other how friends who know each other well and use each other's tools and interests can help to lift each other up. And this, I think, is one of the wonderful ways to learn compassion for others, no matter what their situation and no matter where they are in the world. And that story comes from, not the story, but the figure comes from this wonderful book, String Figures, String Games from Around the World, published by Klutz Press. It's no longer in print, but it is available used. And here's the story of the little girl who they put in the book from the Motua tribe who taught me that figure, because that's where I learned it, was from this book. And thank you so much for your attention and your interest.
Oh, Fred, thank you. Thank you. What a great story. And I think most of us aren't aware of the fact that these string figures and string stories really come from around the world. I think we have a very local view of them. Well, I did that when I was a kid, and that must be the only thing that ever happened. So, where are some of the places that you've encountered the origins of these various figures?
Oh, well, the Native American tribes of North America are the ones that I know the best. And there
Uh-huh.
are
Okay.
many, many. The Navajo people are expert weavers and also string figure experts. The Inuit people in Alaska and northern Canada are also, they have many, many months of being indoors. One of their rules is you can only do string games during the winter time. You're not
Ah.
supposed to do string games when the days get
when
long again.
and there's work to be done outside, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. I want to remind people that we are doing this now twice a day at 2:30 in the afternoon, if you're East Coast time, and 8 o'clock in the evening. And every day we bring someone new to tell a story or two for us and to help us understand that, there really is a fundamental uh, power beneath us all that draws us to healing each other and to being compassionate for each other. And even in those circumstances where we disagree with each other, we can find ways of caring for each other, just like the wonderful folks in Fred's stories did. So please be sure to visit the YouTube page, the YouTube playlist, and catch up on the stories you missed or rewatch those you want to see again. And share this with your friends. Invite more people to attend. Every time there's a little bit more. And we're awfully glad to be able to have the privilege of bringing you stories for healing. So thank you very much and good night.